Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth George, Chief Membership Officer with the American Guild of Organists. And I'm so glad that you could join us tonight, which I think this is going to be a really, really helpful webinar. I know so many of you struggled to submit full slates of officers. Last May, you're having trouble finding volunteers. So this webinar is really going to focus on how you build a community, how you find and grow your volunteers, and how you start to build a leadership pipeline. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. This is being recorded and you are muted, but we do want to hear from you. So please do put your comments, your questions in the Q&A box in the bottom of the screen. You'll see an icon there for that, and we will be happy to answer all of your questions at the end of the webinar. And tonight with us, we have a wonderful panel. We have Judy Cole, who is the director of the Committee on Membership Development and Chapter Support. And also serving on that committee is Judith Miller and Justin Smith. And then we have some representatives from our chapter specialist membership team. And those are Marlene Hallstrom and Philip Smith and Bonnie Lindner, who you will hear from in a little bit. So I'm going to turn this over to Judy, who I know has a couple of really important things she'd just like to talk about as far as new member onboarding. Judy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, I love that poignant phrase that it takes days, weeks, months, and sometimes years to recruit someone, and it only takes minutes to lose somebody. Well, and I've found there's so many ways that we can be proactive in recruiting and retaining new members, and some of them are simple and right there in front of us. So any chance that we can make somebody feel included and cared for, and most importantly, valued, will go a long way toward this goal. So good programming and good PR can attract a potential member, but it really is the personal touch that will make them make the decision to spend their valuable time and money to be a part of AGO, both locally and nationally. I mean, we all know there's so many opportunities available where people can spend both their time and their money. And we want to make this very clear and easy decision for them. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Judy. That was great. I'm so very glad that you shared that. So important. And it's very true. It takes sometimes days, weeks, months to recruit someone. It only takes minutes to lose them. One bad experience at a chapter program, and they may not want to come back. So I'm going to start our PowerPoint for tonight. And I promise it won't be death by PowerPoint, but I really just want to talk a little bit. This is about building your leadership pipeline. And it sounds like a strange thing to say, but it's important. And there are so many ways that you can do this. So let's get started right now. As you saw before, you've heard this phrase, it takes days, weeks, and months to recruit someone. It only takes minutes to lose one. So we talk about the first year of someone's membership as the most critical. This is new member onboarding. And this is a very simple, basic chart that just about every association uses: recruit, recognize, engage, and renew. However, the AGO has taken it much farther, and I'd like to share some other touch points with you about what we do to personalize that first year of a member's experience, which is so critical. So on their first week of membership, they get a welcome email from Member Services. And we hope during that first month, the dean or the registrar or the subdean or someone from the chapter is sending either an email or calling to welcome the new member. We are going to be starting in just a couple of months an AGO open house. What I mean by this is it's going to be a time for new members to come on, jump onto a very brief webinar, and I can give them a tour of our new website that's going to have a lot of new member benefits, which I can't share with you at the moment, but I'm very excited about. So that's something that I think is going to enrich their experience during the first year of their membership. They also are acknowledged during their second month of membership. We have a list of new members, and if they are chapter members, it lists their chapter, or if they're independent, it says independent members by region. And then something that was started this past summer, which I thought was so wonderful, is Bonnie Lindner, who is on one of our member specialist support team members, decided that she wanted to start writing a personal note, which makes such a difference because we've had all these different kinds of touch points from headquarters, and now we have someone contacting a new member, a peer-to-peer communication. Bonnie, can you unmute yourself? Can you put your video on to share why you started doing this?
There we go.
Good for you.
Yes, thanks, Elizabeth. I did this as a way to welcome, to encourage, and to thank people for joining AGO. We in fact do have anywhere from 25 to 150 new members every month. A lot of them are young organists, and so we really do want to encourage them to stay members of AGO. People want to be welcomed, and I think this is one good way to do that. May I remind you, though, that everything is local. And so if you get a note that you have a new member, here's an easy way to do that. Just send an email with 3 sentences that says something like, "Thank you for joining, welcome, and I hope to meet you at the next meeting." And then maybe have somebody in your chapter also email them and offer to take them to the meeting. You know, most of us forget what it's like to be new, but that would be a great way to incorporate those new members as we recruit, recognize, engage, and hope that they'll renew.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm sure everybody remembers what your first experience was like when you walked into a program and you didn't know anyone. So it's really important that we make them feel welcomed as much as we can. Then we get a 6-month welcome email from James Thomashour, which is our executive director of the AGO. After 6 months, we do a chapter check-in. We'll send out an email with a link to a survey to our new members that have joined over the past 7 months, 6 months, and say, how are you? Have you been able to go to any of your chapter programs? Have you gotten involved? Are you volunteering on a committee? And I wish we got more responses, but we kept the questions very short, but we do get a few, but not as many as we'd like. This is the first year that we did not do a member care month, or rather in 2023, when every single person got a note or an email during 1 month from National Council, from regional counselors, from staff, from deans, saying nothing but thank you. We just want to thank you for your membership. I'm not sure we're going to have time to do this before we launch our new database, because we are so consumed with making sure that that is getting upright and loaded and with all the data that it needs. But every April, we do a Volunteer Appreciation Week, in which a pair of organ shoes are raffled off to a young organist member and a regular member and a special member. And then 51 days prior to the members' join date, the emails start. The renewals start either by email, or if they have chosen not to submit their email, which we hope they will, we send a letter. The final communication is always by email, just to say, we don't want to say goodbye. It may be that you just didn't have a time to look in your inbox. And so just take a moment, please. We don't want to say goodbye. We are no longer doing a 3-month grace period. And let me tell you why. We found out it did not make any difference in the number of renewals we got by waiting those 3 months. So just a little snapshot of what we do on the end of National and with our volunteers to welcome our members. So at this point, I believe that Judy is going to take over.
Right. Well, these are some of the things that our chapter has done. We've reached out to new members, as what Elizabeth and Bonnie just mentioned, by a phone call or email, and that has been really successful. We've been mindful of creating a culture at programs where everyone is welcomed and engaged in conversation. So this is kind of the underlying feel. When somebody thinks of our chapter, do they think cold, elitist, whatever they think, or do they think warm and inviting? So that's really creating a culture that's welcoming. So that means as a board, we're very mindful of looking out for somebody standing alone. Sometimes that means longtime members who don't have anybody to talk to. So it's just being aware of things like that. Also, having a variety of events is really helpful, not just concerts, because this gives an opportunity, different ways for people to get to know each other, just not coming to wonderful concerts. And we make sure there's a reception at every event, even if it's just cookies and something, because that gives the time. And it also speaks volumes. Hey, we care about socializing. This is not just about music and our profession, but it's about the relationship. The other thing is the newsletter is such a great opportunity to introduce new members and make them feel valued. And with their picture and their bio, but not just their professional credentials. I mean, some people just like music and they're not necessarily have a big vita for what they've done, but something about them personally, maybe their family. But we've also featured every month one of our longstanding members or one of our regular members, because it's important for the members to know each other, and also that's with new members to get to know them. So this is all under the umbrella of building the culture of being welcoming. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what an ambassador program is and how you can start to create one. And Judith Miller, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the benefits of doing this.
Okay, well, I think that the chapter ambassador program would have a lot of benefits for a chapter. So we are recommending that you develop such a program, and this would be based on a list of micro-volunteer opportunities with short-term commitments within your chapter. Now, this program could grow your chapter's outreach, and it could provide for stronger member care. Members who might not volunteer for any long-term commitments might agree to a short-term responsibility or a micro-volunteer opportunity or task. And this program can encourage everyone in the chapter to be more active in the chapter. Every member can be an ambassador, and everyone can be encouraged to sign up for one or more of these opportunities. This program has the potential to promote retention of members, I think, on two levels, because the ambassadors would have more ownership in the chapter and feel like they're more of a part of the group, more of a sense of belonging. And in turn, the recipients of their efforts would also give them more of a feel of support from the chapter members, and the recipients would also have more a sense of belonging then. So it would promote retention of members on two levels, both the new members and the established members. So the development of the program would include preparing a list of micro-volunteer opportunities, which you will hear more about later, and recruitment methods for ambassadors. And this would give the ambassadors and the recipients a greater sense of belonging to the group, more value, and create a sense of community within the chapter.
Thank you, Judith. Well done. I couldn't have said it better myself. So let's dive into this a little more. And Marlene, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. This is sort of the nuts and bolts of the micro volunteer tasks. Can you hear me?
We can. Do you want to turn your video on?
Yeah, I thought I did, but there we go. Nope.
There you are.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that's mentioned here on the screen is providing name badges, which you can request from AGO headquarters, or we have an event coming up next weekend, and our logo for the Wichita chapter is a outline, a silhouette of a statue that's very prominent in downtown Wichita of a Native American, and we've had it developed so that it has pipes. I don't know if you can see it here. Is that visible? Okay,
Yes,
so I
that's
just
beautiful.
printed some on printable labels, but you can easily get them also from the national headquarters. And that way, everyone who comes in could be asked by one of these as a micro volunteer task to sign in. So we have names and maybe addresses or email address of the people, and also give them a name tag so that we can all see who's there and get acquainted. Sometimes it's, or always, I guess, it's good to have greeters at events when you, especially if you have new members or maybe non-members who you'd like to get to know, and make them feel welcome as they come in. Another thing we can do to ask one of our members to do something on a micro level is to pair our new members with active members who have something in common, and maybe ask the new member how they would like to be involved, or how AGO can meet their needs or interests, or how our local chapter could meet them. We can ask people to introduce those new members or visitors to others who already know each other. At receptions or dinners, we can ask active members to sit with and get acquainted with new members or visitors. Or more informally, just ask our members to look around at a program or at a concert and sit down next to one of the newer people that they don't know so well and introduce themselves. We can also make sure when people are ready to leave an event, we can ask them or tell them about an upcoming event and about our website, and make sure they know, if they're not a member yet, how to find information about our chapter through the website. So those are just a few ways that we can assign micro tasks to our members and get them a little more involved without asking them to run for an elected position or to feel like it's a major obligation, and yet they will feel like they are more active in the chapter.
Thank you, Marlene. All right, Justin, would you like to talk a little bit about recruitment?
Sure. Hopefully, yeah, you can see me. My light is on. Well, we have all this great ambassador program ideas, but how do we actually get anybody to actually do the ambassadoring, I guess you could say, doing the actual task? So we have several options here that maybe would be helpful. I think the most important to me is just asking them face to face. Go to a chapter meeting and say, hey, we need some help for the next chapter meeting. Can you do this or do that? And usually that face-to-face human interaction is the best way to get on somebody's radar in terms of getting them to do a task for you. Another option is to obviously email them, put it in a newsletter, ask for volunteers on your Facebook page, newsletter, social media, or your website. I think that might work better. Maybe in a chapter that has more active members that are more likely to say yes, by just a small ask, though I think maybe if you don't have as active members, you would want to ask them in person. The next point we have here is to just promote it. Every time you can, make a promotion of it and make sure they know it's a micro volunteer task. So the bolded print down at the bottom, I'll skip down there. These things don't take long. You can sit with somebody at a table, you're already there. You don't have to do a lot of extra work. You can just be friendly to them and talk to them, and you don't have to go to another meeting or get on another Zoom call. I know we all love our Zoom calls. And so the other thing is obviously make a list of all your events and initiatives and programs and say, okay, we need greeters for this program. We need somebody at the door for that program. We need name tags person for the next program. Our chapter in Wilmington, North Carolina has a program tomorrow night. And I asked someone can you stand at the door and make sure the caterer knows where to go? And can you greet everybody? That sort of thing. And that's hopefully it's going to happen tomorrow night. And that's the sort of thing that we're thinking of when we're looking for ambassadors or these micro volunteer opportunities.
That's so true, Justin. Those small touches that don't take a lot of time can really make a difference. You know, people hear committee and commitment and they want to run. But if you've got just a couple of tasks you're asking people to do, you say this is the amount of time it's going to take, they're more likely to say, okay, I think I can do this. So now, Philip, would you like to talk a little bit about the next slide? You may need to unmute yourself. There you go. Okay. Can you unmute? Sorry, you're still muted.
There we are.
Okay.
Okay. Now you can hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Good. So the title is this: seek, encourage, and respect one another at a time, one person at a time. You know, it's easy to say, thank you for all you being here, and then you don't name anybody. You know, and particularly we in Los Angeles, we have a monthly dinner before every recital or any program, and there's always a reservation desk where we come in, and there's name tags always ready to go there for everyone that comes in. But during that time, there's, as members come into the reception hall or place that we're going to have dinner, the person that's sitting there says, "There's a new person there. Would you talk to them?" But I think it would be even better if we had an ambassador standing there with who's taking up the collections for dinner and saying, a new person, bring them along, because there's 70 to 90 people in a dinner, you know, by the time everyone gets there in Los Angeles these days. And so but you know who is a new person, that's for sure. It's frequently a very young person who is a student of one of the teachers in Los Angeles, and sometimes they come with that teacher, or so they immediately can that teacher becomes an ambassador, you know, for that student. That way, they recognize their work. Yes, the dean almost always has a welcome at dinner, and then also at the concert itself. So it's acknowledging new members, new people, and also at dinner we also ask, because we're in round tables, who is a new person and who brought that new person, or did they not bring anybody? And so they always will introduce someone, and we always clap and say welcome, and that would put them first in the line for dinner immediately. And here's a glass of wine or juice or something that you'd like to have. And then we have a Facebook page also, and we also have a Instagram page, and we have the regular monthly newsletter, which also helps them. But they have to get assigned. They have to make sure to sign up for that on that. And I think we all, particularly the registrar and other people that are on the board, try to get them to give an email if they have not already become a member, and then do that. And I don't think well, when I was dean for 6 years over time in Los Angeles, the first few years, I had friends, colleagues who hadn't been active in the chapter for 6, 8, 10 years, and I called them individually. I said, it's time to become a member of your chapter again. Start putting yourself on a Monday calendar once a month. You know what the dates are, you know where the times are. Go to the website, and I want to see you at the next meeting. Will you promise me? And almost 98% of them said, okay, Philip, I'll do it for you. I said, no, don't do it for me. Do it for your chapter. And we began to grow all those inactive members back into the fold. Sometimes there was 700 some members of the chapter, because it was the beginning of the founding of the Pasadena chapter, and the Los Angeles came back together. And some of those were 40, 50 miles, 60 miles away from where we're going to be, and they didn't feel really a part of it. So we tried to also do dinners and concerts in all various portions of Los Angeles County. And that helped say, well, we're going to be in your area in 2 months for a recital or a concert or a program, and encourage people to go that distance, that 35 miles out to Pomona, or all the way into the valley, about 40 miles or 35 miles into the valley. We don't always just do everything centered in the city that way. And in the Pasadena and all over the Southern California region, which we are a part of. But it's also just saying to anyone that comes, thank you for being here, and we acknowledge them and clap and give them a special thank you. And I don't know what the dean does after that. I've not been dean for some years, and
Well, I'm
moved to
curious
Palm
if
Springs.
any chapter has an MVP, of the month, most valuable player. That's kind of a
Yeah,
fun
that would,
start, a Hall of Fame where you could recognize somebody that's volunteered, and just add them to your Hall of Fame, and you maybe put it up on the website or your Facebook, or the dean gets up and says, okay, we've got some new MVPs that I want to talk about. So
great.
I think, yeah, I know your chapter does a wonderful job of making people feel very, very welcome at your dinners, which I'm so sorry I have yet to experience, but I do intend to come to one in the future.
Please do, please do. Yeah, no,
Thanks.
it's a great way to welcome people when you sit with dinner, and you make sure you have an old member with a new member, or an old member who hasn't been around for a while, and
Judy said, they always have some sort of food at their programs. She's with the
Yeah.
North Shore chapter. And Leslie Wolf Robb, who is our counselor for communications, and who's also a very active member on the San Diego chapter, has said, you gotta have food. That's the way to
Yeah,
attract them.
yeah,
So
and we have wine also.
if you can, absolutely.
Well,
Most
some churches won't allow it, but
depends on if you're Episcopalian or a
right.
Catholic or whatever.
Roman Catholic, Episcopalian, and several Presbyterian churches these days.
Okay, great. Good to know.
But not Methodist. So anyway,
Okay,
we make
Well-
sure. Anyways, yes,
thank you so much.
sure. Thank
So
you.
let's talk a little bit about all of these opportunities that you have now to build your pipeline. It starts small. Start small. If you give them a finite amount of time in which to do something, people are more likely to volunteer. They're more likely to say yes to you. You know, finding people to serve on your board has become increasingly difficult. I know that. You know that. It's not easy. People are so afraid of the commitment of time. So when you start with these micro volunteer opportunities, it's a great way to give them a taste of doing something and feeling good about what they accomplished. And, you know, maybe this is the beginning, the foundation of your pipeline. And another great thing to do is if they've done a few things for you, and they're still interested in doing some more micro volunteer opportunities, invite them to a board meeting. Have them sit in so they can kind of see what you do, or if you're meeting on Zoom, introduce them. You can always go into private session at some point and just say, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could visit with us. But I really do think that's another way that you can make people feel welcomed and not intimidated about, you know, this having to serve on a board like it's you know,
Punishment.
bricks sitting on your shoulders. But it needs to be nurtured, and it needs to be monitored. And we actually do have as a handout a task list that you can monitor of who people have been assigned tasks. Did they complete them? Maybe you start thinking, gee, this person did such a great job doing that. Would they be interested in becoming a treasurer or a subdean or a secretary or a registrar? So those are just a few things we're going to share with you in a handout. And I believe at this time, I am going to stop sharing. And I'd like everybody to turn their video on and comment a little bit. I do have a question here I'm going to read. The issue keeps coming up, Lynn Francisco, Dean of the Durham Chapel Hill chapter, is that we ask and people keep telling us no. We have not been able to elect a new slate of officers because everybody we ask keeps telling us no. Any ideas or suggestions? Well, you can't wait to ask them to be officers. You've got to start sooner by asking them to, maybe it's write a column for the newsletter, write an article for the newsletter. As we said, if you wait to ask them to serve on a slate at the end of the year, if I'm reading this correctly, it's going to be more difficult. And I know it's hard. I know it's very hard. I think as well, also, you need to think about, and we talked a little bit about this when we did a webinar a couple of months ago about the new chapter operating procedures. And I've looked at a lot of your boards and the number of officers that you have. And some boards have, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 members at large. If you haven't given them tasks to do, they're not going to feel valued. They're not going to feel like they're engaged. So please make sure. I know with some of our larger chapters, I know Dallas very much uses their members at large as chairs for their committees. Some of us may not have the luxury. We may not have that large a chapter. But I think there are ways that you can get them involved, Lynn. And we can have more of a discussion about this. But if I know you've got at least 3 members at large, and I would hope that you've given them some duties and asked them to volunteer for some specific things. So anybody have any other ideas or closing thoughts that they want to share?
Well, I was just gonna say, because she's from my state. Well, hello, Lynn. You know, they actually do have a strong committee structure in Durham Chapel Hill, or at least they used to when I was district convener, and they actually ask when they do a renewal, what committee would you like to be on? And I think that's just a great plan to get almost everybody, if possible, to be on the committee, but maybe not even call it a committee, thinking outside the box here. Maybe just say, oh, no, we're not going to sit around and have Zoom meetings once a month, even if we don't need to. So maybe instead of a committee, how would you like to volunteer? How would you like to help our chapter, and not make it seem like a huge commitment that goes back to our micro volunteer opportunities while still getting the work done, you know. Yes,
And
I'm
you
a
don't have to
treasurer.
use the word committee. You could use the
Right.
word group or team,
Right.
which maybe might sound a little less daunting. But that's a
Yeah.
great idea. I love the idea of when you're renewing them to say, okay, now what are you going to do? How can you help us next year? Here are some ideas. It's a wonderful idea. Who else has some things they'd like to say? Judith.
Well, I think a lot of this could be summed up in Dr. David K. Lamb's quote. He served as our national AGO counselor for membership for several terms. And he said we need to seek, encourage, and respect one person at a time.
One person at a time.
Very simple and very true. Very, very true. Marlene or Bonnie, anything that you want to add? Any nuggets of wisdom? If so, please unmute yourself.
Well, I think we celebrate the fact that we have 12,000 members, but like Judith just said, if we think of that as one member 12,000 times, we will have that personal touch.
Mhm.
Most definitely, most definitely. Judy, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that a vital chapter takes work. I mean, it's okay to think of it as we just don't come together every month for a meeting, but this, I think it takes thinking throughout the month. What can we do, and keeping the focus front and center. That's, and no, don't just focus on programs, but always asking the question, are we a welcoming community to everyone that expresses interest? And how can we creatively and authentically draw people in? And that doesn't happen just asking it as a board once a month meeting. It means every day that we can think about it. Think about another way that we can reel people in. And
Okay,
heard
I've got a
authenticity.
I've got a comment here from someone. A general comment, what I'm hearing overall is to make sure you thank people for what they do. And also contrary to today's methods of communication, it's important to make a personal contact. Exactly. No emails, no texts. That's all impersonal. There's no substitute for that personal contact. Thank you so much. I really I appreciate that. It's so true. It's so true. It's those touches. And you know, I used to love reading your dean's messages, Judy, each month in your newsletter. And she used a phrase, I don't know if you all remember the Motel 6 commercials. She would say, we'll always leave the light on for you. And to me, that is one of the most heartwarming feelings that you can hear from someone. We're there for you. There's always a seat at the table for you. We always want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. It makes such a difference. And it's very interesting because over the last couple of months, Felicia Ross, who is our manager, member engagement, chapter support, and I have been pulling lists of our regular members. They seem to be the largest group over the last few months we've seen who are not renewing. So we sent out a very brief email and we're getting some responses now. Do you have a couple of minutes to talk to us about your experiences? What can we do? Tell us honestly what turned you off from your AGO membership. And very often it's just that I didn't feel welcomed. I felt the chapter was cliquish. We don't want to give that appearance. And I know most of you don't. We're inclusive. We are not exclusive. Most definitely, we are an inclusive organization. Any last words, Philip? You said so many wonderful things about what you do within your chapter that I think we've got a lot of good stuff to take away from tonight. Well, I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight: Justin, Judy, Marlene, Philip, Bonnie. It's important that we talk about this, because if you start now, you might just find that by the time you've got to put your slate together and submit it, hopefully by May 31st to national, you've thought about between now and then how you can get people engaged. And as well, look at that slate. Do you need to have 6 members at large on it unless you've given them responsibilities? Because they're part of your leadership pipeline as well. So I would just like to end that next Monday on February 5th, live on Zoom, J.W. Arnold, who's our marketing and communication specialist, is going to build a webinar live for our Palm Beach County chapter, who doesn't have a
Website. Website, not webinar.
I'm sorry, website, forgive me. Yes, it's a webinar where he's building a website. And we're kind of excited about this. It's going to be like a combination of Julia Child and This Old House, for those of you who might remember that, but it's going to be fun. So he's really going to take all the elements of what you need for a website and put it together. So I encourage you to come on. He says he can do it in under 60 minutes or less, and I am keeping him to that challenge. So you can sign up under our education tab. And then on the February 27th, our Pipeworks STEAM Advisory Council, we're so excited. We've created a guidebook for those of you who have Orgle Kids kits, or maybe purchasing them, ways to promote them, how to use them, how to maximize what you have now taken advantage of, because it's a great investment. And I would be remiss if I did not tell you that tomorrow is the last day that you can register for the National Convention using our Super Saver rate. So between now and then, please go on. We want to see you there. It's going to be a great convention. And by the way, for the first time, we're going to have a chapter leader workshop training on the opening day of the convention, which has never been done before. So it is my goal that we have these at every regional and national convention, and we're going to have fun. So thank you again to everyone who logged on tonight. Thank you to our presenters. Everyone take care, stay well, and I hope to see you next Monday when we build a website together.